Okay. Tu peux plus me parler comme ça, chérie. Okay?
Yes, right?
Non.
Because I can do whatever I want.
Aye, aye, aye. Greetings, folks. Good morning. Ah, Boondock Striker is back. Nice. Was playing in the classical arena 8 or 9 hours ago. Yeah. Okay, and by the way, speaking of the classical arenas, for anyone who wants to play classical, they're still open. You know, they're open all day. They're open another 11 hours or so. But what we're going to be commenting here and now, is the rapid tournaments. Oh, tu vas pas prendre ça, ok. Tu descends. Voilà. T'es libre. All right. We got a little gremlin playing with the pawns here in the corner. Boom! She places the queen with authority. Whoa! La tour. Boom. Pieces are coming down. Here's the chessboard. Tu veux mettre une autre? Wow! La tour! Non? Ok. Non. Tiens, voilà plusieurs. Wow! Ça va? T'as perdu une pièce? I think she lost one of her pieces. Boom! Whoa! Atomic chess. All the pieces around it go flying. You got all the animals fed and walked. Good on you. Whoa! She's whispering her secret phrase for something awesome is about to happen right before she does it. She whispers under her breath. Whoa! Whoa! Mm-hmm. Encore? Whoops, il y a tout ça si tu veux. How's everybody doing? Ready for the tournaments? We're starting in 12, 13 minutes, I think. So, yeah. So hopefully you guys are able to find the right section. I've got it split into 3 groups by rating for today. Maybe I'll go on social media real quick. Well, Twitter specifically. There may be lots of other social medias that I'm not going on right now. And let's just post this. Viewer Rapid Swiss starting in 10 minutes. Hurry to join or watch. Smiley face. All right. Anybody who's got Twitter, you can take and re-whatever it to other people so they can hear about this. All right. Okay, what do we got here? We got 3 different sections. Let me check how they are. Actually, I've got them here, right? Okay. 13 to 1700. Okay, Boondock Striker is indeed in there and ready. Then we've got under 1300. Let's see what we got in there. Nice, got a few people in there. So it looks like we need a minimum of 1 more person per section. That should be okay. And hopefully a few more than that. All right, where are we at here? 15.5. All right. Thanks, bestie. Thank you. You can't hear me, but thank you. Let's see. I can't play moves here. New game. Games. Maybe I'll just show you a game while we wait for 10 minutes here for the tournament to start. For those of you drifting in, be sure to join the tournaments. My opponent played something passive this way comes. And I think black's already slightly better here, though of course white could play knight d2, c3, and they've got a tempo up Philidor, but I don't think the extra tempo really does that much. I mean, I'm sure it does something, but I'd prefer black already. I didn't get too fancy about keeping pieces on the board, even though I've got slightly more space, because I'm black. I don't have the tempi to play fancy moves, you know? Like, if you were white and you were trying to cramp your opponent, you might see someone play a move like knight b6 or something like that to keep more pieces on the board, right? Make life more difficult for their opponent. But you have to understand that your extra space is tenuous when you don't have a lot of time, right? If you burn time, your opponent uses that time to counter and trade off your space, right? So I just willingly made the trade, got castled, c4, b6, bishop b2, bishop b7. The bishop already has a diagonal it can develop on, but I'll just explain my thinking here. I wanted to play f5 at some point to set up a head duo of pawns and have these two pawns be nice and strong and dominate the area here. The 4 squares those pawns would defend or attack. Defend and attack. So I want to set that up at some point, which means the bishop's prospects will be less good with that pawn on f5, and I decided that a bishop on b7 would coordinate pretty well with those pawns for influencing that area, right? Finally, white's always going to have a rook on b1 in this line, pretty much. So I need to do something about my b pawn anyway, right? So if you play a move like bishop e6, you're going to be taxed your b7 pawn defense anyway after rook b1. So b6, bishop b7, it's not costing me too much more time for developing my bishop than going bishop e6, because I kind of need to defend this anyway. And then finally, you might ask, why not just play f5, which is the move that we all know I want to play, right? If Jesse were commenting while I played this game, he would have said, just play f5, David. We all know that that's what you're going to play eventually, right? But I like to have my pieces coordinated before I start opening up gaps and holes in my structure or my position, right? So if I play f5 before I've developed my pieces, there's bigger chances that something like bishop g5, d4, or knight g5, bishop f3 to d5, or that some kind of tactical thing is going to hit me, right? Or let's say you play f5, bishop b2, and now you develop your bishop, there's going to be c5 with the pawn being, right, deflecting your bishop and trading off your center, and now black center is basically just gaping holes, right? There's no power, there's no strength there. So more important to first get this bishop into good position and get the rooks connected. Ça va, chérie? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Est-ce qu'un des pions t'a blessé? Morning, Mahogie. Morning, morning, morning. So I put the bishop over here. Folks, 5 minutes to join the tournaments. Put the bishop over here. Let's keep going. So this is a good defensive maneuver from white that bothered me a lot. Bringing the bishop here. And there's only one good variation for black, and I couldn't find it in a blitz game. I spent 20 seconds here, kind of my limit for a blitz game on a non-critical tactical move. And what I wanted to play was here, here, here as a pawn sack to stifle these pieces. And then here, for white, and then you need a follow-up. Now, the follow-up idea is never to take and release these two pieces, right? Generally, the idea is to go knight e5, so that's what I looked at, stereotyped in the game, putting pressure here. Idea that if they take, you take, takes, and this bishop can't be opposed and rains pressure on the king side. The problem was, in this position, I found this ugly move where white gives up the bishop pair and just moves the rook. And now this bishop, which looks kind of dumb, but it's alive and well, and it stifles and trades off one of my pieces. And I didn't quite find the attack I wanted here. I didn't look as far as the following moves, which are really critical. But black could try a move like this, or bishop c3, Mahogany sees it. I didn't see it in the blitz game because, you know, time. Like, I cut off my calculations after a bit. But pawn takes, I think, is the key move that saves white against bishop f4 or c3. The point being the knight's attacked, but the bishop's hanging. So if we take on d2, white takes on b7. And if we take on f3, the knight on d2 recaptures, escaping. And I think this refutes bishop f4 or bishop c3. So the line I looked at was wrong. And just for your information, because this is such an interesting point, this idea is the correct idea for black. The only way to get an advantage for black in the game position is f5, bishop f3, e4. I checked it later with the computer, and it's just a variation on the stereotyped idea that I thought of. So in a classical game, I could have eventually found this, but in a blitz game, you know, I cut myself off. But you have to play bishop e5 instead of knight e5. Weirdly, you trade this beautiful attacking piece instead of this piece. But basically, they have to trade. They could play rook b1. It's the same thing. You trade and play knight e5, or they can take and you play knight e5. It's just which square the rook's on. Honestly, b2 is probably a little bit worse. But anyway, the point is you get this thing. And now they can't win the battle over this diagonal. And so, you know, they go here, you go here, they go here, you go here. The pressure here is sort of unbearable here and here. And this endgame is a small advantage for black. Super powerful bishop and triple crap pawns. Okay, it's you say very weird idea. It's definitely counterintuitive to trade our amazing piece because we're thinking of this position as being about attacking the king side. And there are plenty of variations where you attack the king side. But in a sense, it's also just a little refinement on the main idea that I knew, right? Which is I go e4 as a pawn sack and I go knight e5, and by the time they open the diagonal, I can take over the diagonal. But here, because there's this defense of giving up the dark squared bishop, which is also their good piece, so it's a little surprising how these dark squared bishops are deprecated in favor of this one knight that can establish the key tension against the bishop. Right? So a little weird, but this bishop e5, that's the move, and then black has a pleasant advantage. Some real suffering for white. Okay, let me remind everybody, tournaments, they're starting now. The first one to start is going to be the 1700 plus section, and it needs another player or it's going to get canceled in 60 seconds. So folks, if there's anybody out there with a 1700chess.com rating, this is the section that may or may not happen. Good morning, NW. All right. Oh, Moodit made it in from YouTube. That's good, because on YouTube I can't have those automated commands that tell you the link to the tournament. It's a little bit annoying, but there's no Moobots on YouTube that I know of. And I've got a lot going on to also be a human Moobot, but I guess that's my role. Know your role and shut up, Pruess. So I will just continue to provide the link in YouTube for now. Folks in the 1700 plus, your games start in 10 seconds. So get your mouse hands ready. And for those of you just here to sit back and watch, you're in luck because here come the games. There's game number 1. And here's game number 2. Right over here with featuring Moodit and Kat Keeson is a 2300. I don't really know. It's a very high rated dojoer. Cool. Now let's check the 1300 to 1700 section. It should be starting any moment now. Oh, that's Mahogi. That makes sense. All right, let's check this link and see if the 13 to 1700 is kicking off here. Hey, Renga. 13 to 1700 section has just started. And we've got Kind Pawn playing. And we've got Boondock Striker and the Ollie Doodle playing a Sicilian against a close Sicilian from Eton. And then finally, the under 1300 section here. And that is starting in 5 seconds. So good luck to Knut, Skogstad, Falgry, Bojack, and Sully. Their games are kicking off too here. Woo! All right. We open up Sully. We open up Bojack. Traditionally, I like to commentate one of the games from the under 1300 section in the first round. These games often get played faster than the games in the two higher rated sections. So let's start with Knut and Bojack. And let's watch this game. An Italian opening. So far, c3 from white gives two different directions. You expand on the queen side or in the center. h3, preventing bishop g4. They seem to know their stuff. They're playing out these moves quite quickly and, really normally. Although, if I were Bojack here, I would have definitely considered bishop e6, I think, is kind of a standard GM move here. So let's see what this is about. I wonder if Bojack thought, let's just give the piece for the couple pawns and create that kind of scenario where the king is open and exposed and weak. And wow, they're blitzing ahead of us. It's hard to keep up, but I just want to make one or two comments before the game's over. So I'm going to say bishop takes h3, pawn takes h3, queen takes h3 here. It's probably, it's not a good enough trade for the bishop, right? Two pawns and exposed king is often a good trade. So how do you know if it's a good trade or not, right? Like, let's say white played a move like b4, taking space on the queen side, and you took. How do we know whether the factors are in favor of black or white here? Basically, the way we know is through experience. You have to try these kinds of things, and then over time, you figure out what does or doesn't work and what factors you need for it to work, and then you refine it with time. Oh shoot, I'll be right back. I have to share one piece of information here. Okay, so basically, with queen c8, I think Bojack wanted to make a bad sack. But I actually want to praise this and say this is a good thing, right? Bojack is trying things, and that way Bojack is going to know whether or not this sack is good or bad in different situations in the future. There are situations where it is good and situations where it's not good enough, and by how much, right? Did it just barely win, or did it easily win, or did it lead to equality? Did it lead to a perpetual check? You need to slowly be able to improve your assessments of these things, and experience is one of the very best teachers of that. Some people don't know if bishop takes h3 is good or bad, so they never try it. You see what I mean? And Bojack wanted to try it, and that's important. That's absolutely what you got to do. Okay, so white played king h2, defending the pawn, and Bojack sent the other knight towards the king side. Okay, rook opposite the queen, restraining this move here. Queen gets off of the file of the rook. Black grabs that pawn, and white finds queen takes g6. Oh, they didn't blunder the pawn at all, did they? Bojack was playing so fast. You know, the idea was to freeze the queen and the pawn here, right? If the queen moves, the pawn goes. If the pawn goes, the queen goes. But this was a beautiful move from Knut. And Bojack didn't take Knut seriously enough there. Thought that they blundered the pawn, but didn't look hard enough at what they might be doing. Trades that, gets away with the extra pawn. And puts the knight into a good spot. Kicks the knight. Very, very good. So here you see Bojack making use of the pawn. You've got one pawn against a knight. You better make good use of that pawn, right? And gets in f6. Kicks the knight back. Honestly, still making a game of it. Down a piece is Bojack. But generally, you know, playing too fast, right? 15 minutes left out of 15 minutes. Whereas Knut is occasionally thinking for a bit. And, yeah. Nice square found for one of the pieces here, blockading the isolated pawns, supported and well defended. The thing that's concerning me about Knut's play is that there have been many, many moves where this rook could have come out and it hasn't yet. So, yeah, that's my one little worry with Knut, but I like that Knut, you know, stops and thinks about it all. I think Bojack may have in mind a brilliant knight maneuver. Bringing the knight, it looked like he was on a pretty good square, but I think they might be thinking of knight e5, knight c4. Which, if that's what they were thinking, that's really surprisingly deep. Okay, here comes a threat from Bojack. Knut finally brings out the rook, which I wanted them to do. But in this situation, it's not very good. Uh-oh, now the moment of truth. How do you take back the knight? Oh my god! Knut saw the queen takes d4 trick. Are you kidding me? Knut foresaw Bojack's tactic. And that's a win for the 500 rated player who gains 300 points and now has about the same rating as Bojack, and it seems less surprising. Whoo! Do you see that, Baymone? Bojack plays rook c8, threatening queen d4. We think rook e1 comes at a bad moment. Oh, they haven't seen the queen takes d4 threat. The rook's hanging, so Bojack first has to trade off the rook. And now, the obvious move, of course, is rook e1, taking over the open file and losing. Instead, we get knight takes e1, defending the queen. And Bojack goes for it anyway, but yeah, Bojack just did not show enough respect to the opponent there. Maybe because the opponent's rating said 500, but I guess Knut had only played 1 or 2 games. If you're getting plus 300, it means it's one of your first couple games, you know, that your rating's kind of not super defined yet. So what did we learn from that game, folks? Number one, we saw a good thing from Bojack, trying things, right? Trying things in order to calibrate and learn from them, right? And then, on the other hand, we saw playing too fast, right? If you go for things, but you don't ever reflect on whether or not they work, then you have to find out the hard way on every single thing. You know what I mean? Like, if you never ask yourself, what happens if I run into this wall or jump off this cliff or stick this knife through my hand? Right? If you never ask yourself that, and you just do every single thing to learn, you know, you suffer some painful moments like Bojack did in this game here today. All right, let's see some of our other games. We've got Sully and Falgry still locked in combat. I told you sometimes the games in the lower sections can be really fast, right? That was like a quick affair there. Sully and Falgry still have all their pieces, essentially, right? Just 1 or 2 pawns done. White completes development with that trade, gives up the bishop pair, and potentially Black's counterplay is going to have to be this really nice dark squared bishop after the e5 pawn goes. Because Black has sacked 2 pawns in the opening, I think, so they're going to need to get some active pieces in this game to make up for it. White has, you know, relatively an easy plan of advancing the passed a pawn at some really later date. But the thing that could restrain White would be Black attacking these 2 squares, right? The bishop on f6, the rook on b8 could create annoying pressure. Over here could be hard for White to organize. So White goes immediately on the attack with this knight, opening up the attacks between the bishops and also introducing this knight c6 threat. Let's see what White has in mind here. Because Falgry responded too quickly to that knight d4 move. Yeah. Well, Sully had knight c6 in mind. There's the queen trap on the board. Now it's a critical moment again for Falgry. How do you respond to this unpleasant surprise of knight c6? Right? Like, do you get upset at yourself, or do you regroup? Do you resign, or do you calculate? Do you take your time, or do you blitz something out? Like, oh yeah, I saw that, you know, play some move really fast, pretending that you had seen the move coming to keep up your confidence. All right. Falgry showing incredible calm there in the face of the blunder. Right? Does not despair, spends a minute thinking, assesses the situation, and finds the only way out for the queen, which is to counterattack the other queen. And if the queen moves to like b7, you've got this new square on c8, so your queen can get away now. Bravo. Here again, important moment. Falgry played too quickly on this move, right, folks? Knight d4, underestimating these threats. Played bishop f6, which allows both bishop takes g4 and knight c6. Both of White's threats are allowed by this. This is the strategic move you wanted to play, right? When thinking about e takes f4, you're assessing, okay, what's the main thing I want to do? How do I get counterplay this game? Bishop f6 is the move you want to play strategically. White plays a move with 2 tactical threats, and you just blitz out the strategic move you want to play. And that shows you how like good strategic moves can sometimes be really bad, right? And then we get into tactics, and luckily Falgry starts spending time on it. Okay, there goes the bishop on g4. So here there was a resource for Black. It's very, I mean, it's a bit tricky, but the key resource for Black is even though your rook's hanging, you have to make the bishop trade. You're better off getting a bishop and losing a rook than losing a bishop for nothing like this. So even if there weren't the rook on f1, the right move here would be bishop takes e2, and then after knight takes a7, you could retreat your bishop, for example, and that would still give you a better chance of resisting against White with an extra rook if you have this bishop pair and you're not down a full piece. But in fact, because you can take here, it's totally equaling the trades. So bishop takes e2 was a key calculation piece right here. Exactly. For those of you who know what the exchange is, what I'm saying is being the exchange down is usually way better than being a piece down. Much more competitive. Okay, so this happened, knight developed. Wow. Sully doesn't just play obvious moves. Sully plays some real interesting stuff. E5 pawn sack, very advanced move. There's pressure here against b2 and c3, right? If you move the knight, you drop the pawn. If you move the pawn, you drop the knight, kind of situation, right? So you could play maybe a really passive defendy kind of move like this. Or if you're really creative, you can find this e5 idea. Nice move. Blocking that bishop in and killing the pressure and potentially following up with rook e1 or b4. Two interesting moves available for white here. Rook e1 is the choice, yeah. With this, you can probably regain the e-pawn at some point. We get the castle, cackle, cackle. It's not the game that made me yawn melt like butter. It's the number of games I've commented in the last hours compared to the number of hours I've slept. It's just my life makes me yawn. The game is quite exciting, right? We've got hanging queens that are trapped, other queens escaping. Hey, Shadow Jutsu, I'm sorry, the tournament has already started, so it's too late to get in on it. Actually, I'll take this line out of the info here. Tournament started at 9:30 today. If you want to keep track of Chess Dojo tournaments and when you can play them, let me show you a convenient link here. We just crossed 5,000 people in the club. Nice. Yeah, so with this link here to our club, you can see the schedule for upcoming tournaments there, for example. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, Kevin James. Hopefully you can make the best of it and enjoy some of these other folks' games, although, you know, there's nothing like playing ourselves. Okay, so Sully trades off a piece, keeping control of the position, and Fougry does what they can, you know, regains a pawn here, gets into the second rank where the rook can show its appetite. And Sully says, take all the pawns. I don't know what to do with them. That can't be the best choice here, I don't think. Can't be the best choice here. My first thought of technique is keep this pawn because it's a candidate to win the game. This pawn here, I mean, a pawn is a pawn. I would love to keep it, but I probably have to let something go. My instinct is to go a4, rook takes a5, and send this guy here as far as I can if I'm white. Yeah, just sort of a little point on technique. So white's up a piece, right? But in order to win when you've got an extra piece in an endgame, you need to queen a pawn. You can't checkmate your opponent with one knight, right? So to win this game, you have to make a queen. Normally, it's a multi-step process. First, you find some weak pawn of your opponent's. You attack it a bunch of times because you've got an extra piece. You capture it. You create a pawn majority. You make a passed pawn by advancing the majority. You threaten to queen the passed pawn. Your opponent has to block it with their bishop or rook. You win a bishop or a rook. Here, you already have a passed pawn. That's like the key ingredient for winning an endgame, basically, period. So the right technique is just to send it forward. Okay, let's watch how the game develops. Black captures a pawn. Here, you could eliminate the a pawn. I would really want to if I were black, but we see Fougry is a little bit more aggressive and confident here, which makes sense because Fougry doesn't normally play against people with as good endgame technique as me, right? I play against people with such good endgame technique that if I can get rid of a pawn that I know is going to beat me, I just have to do it. I know that my opponents, if they get this pawn rolling, the game's over for me, so I'd have to grab it. But Falgri is going for activity, right? Getting the bishop that was blocked back into the game, weakening White's king. It's a much more aggressive and confident way to play this. Also, it opens up this threat of f5. So, pretty cool move. Check here, and now gets rid of that pawn. Humorously, I've wanted to take this pawn for like 7 moves, and now I'm wondering if f5 isn't better, attacking all these pieces. Yeah, if you don't have a lot of experience in endgames, bestie, then you won't value passed pawns as much as somebody who plays a lot of endgames. Because in a middle game, it's extremely rare to win a middle game because of a passed pawn, right? Exceptionally rare. You win middle games by hanging less pieces than your opponents, right? Double attacking more of their pieces than they double attack yours, and then just coming out with, an extra, just so many chunks of extra material that you start just taking everything they have. Whereas endgames are won by a little pawn getting down the board. And the more endgames you play, the more you value that. Yeah, melt like butter. After f5, there might be this move, rook here, huh? With the recapture. Okay. I think that's sound, melt like butter. I think that's sound. And so, yeah, black should take the a-pawn, and they did. Bishop here. So a lot of people would want to set up this defensive thing and put the king in sort of a back rank mate cage. But Falgri plays it a little differently, an interesting way. It keeps control of this square and this square, making it hard for the king to come out like that. It also blocks this rook e2 resource. So potentially, it could be setting up this f5 threat. It might be the right thing for you, bestie. So now it's very hard to win this endgame as white, let's just say. Technically, white's still up a piece, right? The knight. But I think white has lost 3 pawns and captured 1. Okay. So white has lost 2 pawns over the course of the last 5-6 moves, right? They lost 3, black lost 1. And also, it's just the number of pawns they have to try and win the game with has been so much reduced. Nowhere on the board do you see a passed pawn for white. Nowhere on the board do you see a pawn majority for white. So, like, if you were to say, we're going to win this game, how is white? Is this pawn going to queen? It's a long way from queening, right? Melt Like Butter, chess.com allows a maximum of 10% of late joins to a tournament based on the number of people that were in the tournament when it started. And today we only had 4 people in each section when it started. So there's either 0 or 1 late join spots. Yeah, when we've got bigger tournaments, then I tell people, yeah, you can still join, When we were doing this tournament more consistently in the past, we might have 20, 25 people in each section, and chess.com might allow 4 or 5 people to late join. But today, I don't expect that it is letting people do that. All right, so Kevin James has suggested the only real plan for white to win here, which is to go after c7, win the c7 pawn, and then queen the d pawn. That's basically the last plan there is here for white. If you don't do that plan as white, you're pretty much not winning. If black trades this pawn or protects this pawn, there's not really a winning plan. So we'll see what happens. f5. There goes white's extra piece. Falgri's comeback is complete. So let me just say, folks, remember how here I said, which pawn should we give? It's a little controversial, and I took the time to suggest good technique. You see what happens if you don't really know how to win an endgame? Having an extra piece almost doesn't matter if you don't have any plan, right? White doesn't even realize that you're supposed to defend your pawns. Just lets black take them all, thinking like, whatever, they're just pawns, right? And then, yeah. Next thing you know, you don't have anywhere on the board with any kind of an advantage or any sense of where you're supposed to win the game. And there we go. Black starts cleaning it all up. Yeah, if queens were on the board with an extra piece, you should try to attack the opponent's king often, while also being willing to make, random even trades and head towards an endgame that you should also be able to win. But if you're an endgame, you got to think about pawns and passed pawns. Oh, is that a fork I see before me? The fork towards my fork? I think there's only one way out of this for black, and it is hard to see. On Fougry's and calculation here. Man, the moment that everything worked out, white left the knight and pawn seemingly hanging and had this sneak of a move. Well, let me check if my idea does work or not. Yeah, I think there's a way out over there. Maybe two ways out. Maybe two ways out. I'm going to grab this position. Yeah, Bessie, like me, you were, before being surprised by the knight fork, you were sitting here calculating knight takes f4, right? Expecting white to try to draw the endgame that way, huh? And in fact, there was this fork on the board. Knights often surprise me. If I'm not really paying close attention, this kind of stuff will still get me, even at my, IM title level-ish, Actually, this position here is already fascinating because, let me grab this, put it in my, oh shoot, did I already close my puzzles? All right, so here's why this is so interesting. In this position here, forking the rooks was probably not actually best because black has two ways out of it, right? Kevin James found both of them. One is rook a4, and then if knight d5, rook e4. And if rook e8, king f7, and if knight takes rook, king takes, right? And if rook takes e3, rook takes b4. But if you go here, white actually had a way to gain the advantage instead of attacking the rooks, which is you check. Only one legal move. You force the king onto this file. You take back defending your knight. Whoa! Even Kevin James hadn't pointed that one out to us yet. Isn't that a weird, unexpected thing? It's not a million moves ahead. It's just weird, right? Like, your knight's attacked. How could knight b4 be wrong? Right? And somehow you force the king onto the f file and then defend our knight. Really unusual. So I clipped that for our tactics database. It's quite an unexpected tactic for white here, down 2 pawns. Everything seemingly defended for black. White under attack. Okay, let's see how the game goes. We got knight b4 and then a really fancy fighting move from black with f3. White took one of the rooks too hastily, 13 seconds. You've got 3.5, 4 minutes. You got to use them because this is a big deal. You just gave black a wow! No! This is hanging! Oh my god! Oh no! Okay, folks. Black could give checkmate in 1 with a double check. Black could take the rook and get an extra queen with discovered check and keep going. Or my favorite option, and I'm sure it's going to be all of your favorite options as well. F1 knight, double check. Only one legal move for the king. Look, you can see chess.com is going to just beep at me till I go in the corner. And now we put baby in the corner. Checkmate with the bishop and knight. And it's a pure mate. Oh! A pure mate is a term that has purely artistic meaning. It has no, it doesn't win a game more or less. It doesn't mean you're using a discovered check or something like that. A pure mate means that each square is only covered by one piece. Okay? So this square is only covered by the knight. This square is only covered by the bishop. And these 2 squares are only covered by the rook. So it's an economy of means, right? Each piece contributes and no square is double covered, right? It's the opposite of something like this first one here with the queen, right? This is just like an explosion of every square is covered. You know, the king's attacked twice himself. Even the square he's on is attacked twice. G2 attacked twice. He's just smothered by the opponent's pieces, right? This one here has a different kind of artistry. It's like 7 precision passes rather than just like 3 people together dunking one ball through a broken hoop, you know? So that's what a pure mate is. Fantastical. How did that game end? It just closed it on me. Games that I was watching. It looks like Knut won it in the end. No, that was the game with Bojack. All right, we're gonna have to go into Sully's history to see how it ended. Give me a second, folks. I was just too caught up in those checkmates, you know? All right. White is the one who won it, folks. All right, look at this. Actually, the way it ends is insane as well. Makes a queen, attacks the knight, checkmate. The king is cut off by a pinned piece. So white actually snatched victory at the final moment from Falgary. I only wonder if rook f2 is somehow like a mouse slip or a what. I mean, this pawn could have just wreaked devastation here at f1 or g1. This should have been Falgary's comeback this game. Should have been an incredible comeback, that one. But we're into round 2, and I'm going to grab a game from the 13 to 1700 section now. Okay, folks? So let's pull up another section. Put it here. Let's see. Let's check out a game from Ollie Doodle. I have not often watched Ollie Doodle, and that's a beautiful little doggo. Let's see what we got going on here. It's a French defense. You see this d4, e5 pawn structure for white in the center and d5, e6 for black. We got a French here. Yeah, I wonder if rook f2 was a mouse slip or some kind of panic. Falgary was getting low on time. But all their moves throughout the game made sense until that last 2 moves, right, Bestie? until rook f2, everything black did made sense. And after rook f2 and white took on f2, black didn't even recapture with the bishop. They just, their last 3 moves made no sense. Like they had just, like me when I'm under 20 seconds, right? Like they just blind panic or just, you know, threw your mouse against the wall and saw what button clicked against the wall as it hit the wall. It's hard to say what happened, but the last 3 moves of the game made no sense. All right, so the players are fighting over the squares on this pawn chain, right? Because look, as soon as white establishes the pawn chain, like so, black attacks it, defends it, trade, attacks it. Now this move here has an idea of coming into e6, hitting the queen, hitting the pawn. And even though white doesn't have many pieces out, this knight does actually wreak some havoc in this position here. And yeah. Maybe black can survive with minimal losses because white's not well developed. Maybe white's only winning like a pawn or so, but it's a pretty good, it's a decent threat from white. I think you have to respect knight e6 probably, so black does with knight b6. And now bishop b5. Normally you wouldn't want to trade this bishop for this knight. It's a really good bishop, but here white wants to be able to recapture on e5 with the knight if black trades. Black castles. Nice way of maybe threatening to take this with the knight no longer pinned. And see if white really is going to trade. But if white trades, now you don't have to take and bring the knight to e5 because they've already traded. Yeah. So castle's asking a tricky question of white here. And you see white trying to support this heavy center. They're actually potentially falling a little bit behind in development as they try and support the center, right? So you must tread carefully as white here. Yeah, my own feeling is that black's somehow going to come out okay out of this opening, out of this French here. Kevin feels similarly. Somehow it feels like the time is there for black. They've got just enough time and force that white cannot hold everything together, but we'll see. A3 was a costly tempo earlier on in the game as well. One thing white could do, maybe Kevin James, is castle and after trades take back like this instead of with a piece. This is not normally the goal of playing this position, but this structure is actually playable. F2, E5 against D5, E6. It's fully playable. You're still clamping black with some space, and you can defend this pawn somewhat with your pieces. So it's not super strong. You're not stifling the opponent. And people playing this line here as white, oh, they want to stifle their opponent. They want to give them nothing, you know? They really want to concede and give absolutely nothing. So it's not generally in their nature to accept that sort of half result. So you'll often see them go down because they insist on like having everything, and they do it even when the calculations show that they can't hold everything. They still just try to hold everything no matter what. So you'll see them, you know, getting into fancy things like when black takes, they take here, and black takes, and they just insist this tactic should somehow work for me, you know, and then they realize, oh, I'm down a pawn, and, you know, it didn't work for me, and right, the game goes on. So we'll see how white reacts. A good thing about white's reaction is that they thought quite a while on this move. They thought for almost 4 minutes on castling. So that was the really big think of the game. Black takes on e5, and now white's thinking here. And yeah, if they recapture with the d pawn, that's a lot of A lot of props to white. Yeah! All right. This Ollie Doodle is more flexible than the average player, even a couple 100 points higher rated than them. So, you know, black has done very well. They've defended this opening successfully, but white did the right adjustment. They accepted that black had defended adequately, and they said, okay, let's play sort of like a reasonable and equalish and still complicated position. Yeah, it's a great choice. Now white even has to ask about bishop takes c6, knight d4. Strategically horrible, but if black can't defend e6, then it's just glorious. And if that doesn't work, bishop d3 is the normal move. Ollie Doodle is really willing to spend time on interesting questions and plays quickly on moves that don't need all that consideration. So I'm impressed actually with the time usage here. To be able to both play quickly and slowly means that you have a sense of which moves are more or less important and that you're allocating your time according to that. Right? Some people either play slowly or they play quickly. People just play slowly. They don't understand what fights are or are not worth fighting, right? When you just say whatever and play something. And they get in trouble later in their games because of time pressure again and again and again, and they choose not to change. People who play too fast make blunders all the time and just, I don't know, trundle along their very random, coin flipping ways. But somebody who plays fast and slow on different moves, that's very impressive. All right, so the bishop came back. What do folks think about the trade? Like, would this have panned out? It's so bad strategically. Me personally, I don't see a way to defend the e6 pawn. Well, that's my instinct as well, Kevin, is like I'm so loath to lose my pawn base, and I'm so pumped to have this unopposed bishop here that this is my first instinct of what black should do. But the first question is there a way to defend the pawn? I don't see any. So unless we're missing something, this is what Kevin James and I would do. Here, here, here. And be proud of our bishop. We're down in exchange, but amazing pawn structure and amazing bishop. However, Kevin, when I reflected on it more, I thought this might be a little optimistic when I thought about white just putting a pawn on that diagonal and then just playing the whole game up in exchange. Like, gradually, we can't deny that we're worse as black, I don't think. But maybe we can even just play slowly, though. Maybe this position's, amazingly resilient. We control here. We play on the B file. White doesn't have much of a plan. This knight needs to get to e4. Oh, Zach Hansen says we might have miscalculated something. Right after knight d4, rook f4, there might be knight takes c6. And the idea is, queen to c7 or e8 or f8 or wherever it goes. You trade and take, and black's just dead. Now we're down an exchange and a pawn and nothing. It's just dead. Yeah, it looks like it's actually not a shot, Kevin James, unfortunately. So, what we should do is what? Just give a pawn. And just play the game down a pawn. It's not very good for black, is it? But maybe it's not the end. Here you could trade and grab your pawn back. Maybe. What we're going to do about f5, establishing an outpost, I don't know. Oh, c5. 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 Knight c7 too. Holy moly. Ugh. I'm very bad at the hoppy pieces. Okay, well this looks like it would have been pretty tough for black to handle, knight d4. I don't really see an adequate way to arrange the pieces while dropping the pawn and really having any kind of counterplay. All right, let's see the actual game. Bishop d3, knight d... This is rather simpler, isn't it? And here again, he could have hopped in here and taken this rook. A lot more work for black to recover the knight over there. So you see, Kevin, it could happen to anyone to miss knight c7. It could happen to anyone except you, I guess. But all right, so the position simplifies a bit. White's got an extra exchange and pawn. And this pawn's isolated, and this pawn looks strong just from the piece support. Ollie Doodle in good shape. Offers a simplifying trade while developing. Perfection. It's definitely easier to be the commentator than the player, and maybe it's even one more step easier to be the observer than the commentator. Because the commentator has to also, think about other things, like how do I explain this, or whatever, and if you wanted to, you could just sit there and calculate really hard, and you would be able to calculate more stuff than the commentator. All right, so bishop e3 is a perfection of a move. These two pieces are coordinating. There's a little bit of weakness or pressure here. So bishop e3 deals with all that while taking an unemployed piece that was doing nothing and then developing it. And yeah, that's a perfect move. So things are looking grim for Baymon after that knight e6 incident. Hey, Cross. How's your Saturday? And also, if you don't mind my asking, Cross, what time zone are you in? I realize I don't know. I don't know or remember what time zone you live in. Texas. Okay. So the same time zone as St. Louis, I guess. That's like the chess players' map of the country. The tournament is 4 rounds, melt like butter, and we are in the second of those rounds. Okay, Baymon, good choice. Avoids the trade. Check to the miserable king. I don't know if white could play the super complicated knight g5. Probably not because of knight e5. But maybe still. Like, you could try stuff. But my instinct, if I'm up an exchange and a pawn and it's a blitz game, is not to do anything too funky. Not to do anything too funky. Unless there's something really pushing me to do it. Bessie, if there's one thing about me that you least want to copy, it's my sleep. I'm not trying to say everything else about me is, a paragon and something that everyone should aspire to, but I think the thing you would least want to copy would be my sleeping. Knight b6, necessary. It's just development. Baymon's got to get these dogs out. If they don't come out, well, then you're not playing chess. Yeah. I would say until you bring your pieces out, you're not yet quite playing chess. You know, they got to come out. You played one of your best games. Woo! Well, that's an exhilarating / euphoric feeling. And 4 kids. Wow. That's a full house. Congrats on all the kids. Kevin James saying this knight looks pretty vulnerable there. And yeah, my instinct also was just to move my bishop away somewhere, not to take the pawn and give up the bishop pair. But then after Ollie Doodle did it, I thought, well, a pawn is a pawn, and you're trading stuff off. How bad can it be? So we'll see. The bishop needed to retreat. Yeah, I was thinking the other option is you go like rook c1 immediately, just letting black trade anything they want, even knights for bishops. But this knight's not very good, so I think it makes a lot of sense to leave it there, right? Like that knight is plain bad on b6. So I think probably bishop a2 from Ollie Doodle was better than rushing out with rook c1. An important thing about this is, realizing that there's these different values in chess that change sometimes. Sometimes you're just trying to rush your stuff out faster, and you'd say, who cares? Take the bishop pair, whatever. Now face my rook, right? What's better than a bishop or a knight? A rook. Hello, here it is. It's not on a1 anymore. But, that bishop's defended. Black might even be able to just b5 you, kick you back, and develop this too. I don't know. So at other times, you spend the time. You retreat your bishop and leave that knight sort of stranded on a not good square on b6. So sometimes it's like tempo, 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 and other times it's like, oh wait, if we do this, it's just it really has such a different positional value that it's worth more than the time, right? So time is one of the most important values in chess, but it doesn't trump everything. Sometimes it's great to leave your opponent with a bad piece, and it's going to take many moves to get that piece good. It's a mix of calculation and intuition. For me, often my intuition suggests a first instinct of what I want to do, and then calculation nudges me in the right direction. Like here I had the wrong intuition, for example, Kevin. My first thought was I see this, and I'm just thinking like, bam! I defend and I attack and I develop. That was a very strong instinct for me, right? Like a very powerful, like, oh, that's got to be the way kind of thing, right? Then I noticed that after knight c4, rook c4, the bishop's defended. I'm not even tempoing it, and the opponent has a bit of a free hand, and they've got the full pure bishop pair. And I started thinking, well, like, what if we retreated the bishop? What would that picture look like? And suddenly I realized how bad the knight was going to be. So for me, it was multi-step this time, Ooh. Look, black tried to fix the knight, do something with it, attack the pawn if the pawn moves, get the knight into c3. But black didn't have that square either. And now the pieces are struggling to get out. Okay, Cross also has the initiative mind b4. That's a good move, Cross. I think that's also like a sign of in good positions, you've got lots of good moves. Because I think ultimately rook c1 also leaves white with a winning advantage, because white started with a winning advantage, right? B4 looks very nice. His point is melt like butter, that then when he recaptures, he defends the bishop. So he's just simplifying the heck out of the position. If black takes here, he takes like this. If black goes here, he has one of two moves in mind. I don't know for sure which one. They both look really good. Rook c1 sort of tying this up in a bad way, or maybe e6 keeping the bishop from developing and threatening to just go e7, e8 at some point. Maybe the only question with b4 would be takes. Takes. Sort of getting a pawn for black. But again, white is ahead by so much, and you're simplifying that even if I haven't miscalculated something and black can win a pawn back like this, it gives cross time to play e6. Right? And everything's trapped. And white wins as well. So, okay, knight a4 came in. Queen takes a4, bishop d7, queen d1. Too cautious there. Queen takes d7 was fine as well. Here, rook d8, knight f3. Fair enough, yeah. Defending f2. Now all the black pieces are on the best possible squares. There's definitely some pressure, but white's up a full rook. Full rook. That means you can play moves like queen d8 and win. Or e6. And Falgri, we covered a game of yours, so you can definitely check it on the VOD as well. If you want to try and review it yourself first, you can do that, but you can also check it on the VOD. We looked at an epic game of yours where you had black. Okay, queen e2 play, just a safe move, defending these spots. Good evening, Soren. Welcome. And Mudit, congrats on playing a really great competitive game with a master. Bravo. That's really cool. Man, Baymon's position, you don't feel that he's down a whole rook, do you? You don't really feel the absence of rook. All the black pieces are so well placed right now. This is like the positions I get when I play piece odds against other opponents. Look at that pressure. Queen g4. The knight on f3 looks dead. f2 and g2 are dead. There's still defenses for white, but it's incredible how much pressure black's generated. I see maybe only 2 moves that kind of hang in there for white at this point. Black won. White moved the knight. Look at that comeback, down a whole rook. Woo! Not over till it's over. So it's worth putting all your pieces on good squares, even if you're down a rook. And it's worth not resigning. It's a rapid game. They use a lot of time. You can get tired. You can make mistakes. E7 probably works, yeah, but it's not obvious, and it's a chaotic move to play. The simplest and cleanest move for white for the last 2 moves was bishop d5, and that's the move where you feel the presence of the extra rook, right? When you come in here and you're able to sort of neutralize and block off the opponent's pieces because you just have so much stuff in the middle of the board. And that also, here instead of e6, I would have done the same thing. I would have just been neutralizing this piece. Some people in chat were thinking of asking why black hadn't resigned, and then black won the game. Yeah, Cross says black's mental state is impressive, right? Not everybody would save this game, right? You've got your Nordovics, you've got your Baymons, I guess. But a lot of people just resign after something like this. maybe like here's where a lot of people resign, right? Knight a4, trying to find breath for your stupid knight that's stuck on b6 and can't move. You find out it actually couldn't move. You've dropped a piece. This is where most people resign. It's a rook and 2 pawns for nothing, right? But Baemon keeps going, brings all the pieces to their best square. It just keeps playing like it's normal chess. This is how I play in odds games. You know, you just keep trying to put your pieces on good squares. You know, make your opponent find ways to neutralize them. Yeah, fantastic. All right, let's try and get a game from the 1700 plus section. It's over? How did they finish first? All right, well, let's look at a game from their section. I've never seen them finish first. Oh, it was only 2 rounds long? Oh, they must have had some withdrawals or something. Okay, so they had 1 less round than the other sections. All right, well, let's look at a game anyway. This is going to be the decisive game that decided the winner of the 2-person tournament. All right, folks, announcement from Soren. Soren's trying to set up a small group in the training program for some plus-minus equal reviews of looking at each other's games. Schedule being submit a game by Sunday and then meet on Thursday to discuss the submitted games together, right? So if, 3 or 4 people submit a game, then you've got 3 or 4 games to discuss. And Soren says if you check the Dojo calendar, you can see their ad as well to sign up for it. All right, let's check this game. So, Mudit from YouTube against Hosta Mahogi from Twitch. Okay, so a solid opening. No immediate threats or pressure from white, so black's able to set up their pieces safely as well. And yeah, the most obvious break for either player is going to be c5 and c4. And white prepares it with rook c1, and black gets their move first, even though they're black. White could have played it here, right, since they were white. Makes the trade and takes with a piece. So I think the thought was that if you take with the pawn, white's going to play c4, and then the center is going to be weird for black. Black doesn't think they've got the power to push d4, although that is something that we could try and analyze and calculate. If they take, then white could take with knight or bishop, but the point is this pawn will be isolated and weak, so that's undesirable. If you play e6, then you get hanging pawns, which are also slightly weak. So black was afraid that if they take with the pawn, basically this pawn's not going to be very good after white plays c4. It hinges quite a bit on whether the d4 move was at all plausible, but this is a hard move to calculate in a faster game. Sometimes you have to be more practical and not even spend time trying to figure this out in the opening. But let's have a quick look. Idea is you use this pin to maybe eventually recover your pawn, or at least white's tied up and has trouble, getting out of the whole situation. And you also have knight f4 to put pressure against white's light squares elsewhere. So you're playing for 2 things at once. But with this knight on d7 instead of c6, I don't see how we put much pressure on d4 as black. So maybe white should just play g3 to hold this knight at bay and not worry as much about this point. Then, from black's perspective, what are we doing? Knight b8? Queen c2 takes. Takes here. I think black's winning back their pawn, simply. Beautiful position with the great bishop, right? Where's my game I was just looking at? Games. Okay. So my preliminary calculation, whoops, sorry. My preliminary calculation suggests that it may have actually been playable to take back with the b pawn, and after c4 play d4. A little bit surprising. But there it is. It might have been possible. This is the move that, you know, a strong player would usually play very quickly in blitz or rapid. I see that Hosta spent 20 seconds on it, so definitely stop for a moment and consider the two options. Okay, now white plays c4, kind of equalizing the center. Trade, trade, trade. And we get a pretty equal position here. Black chooses to keep it in a middle game, avoiding the queen trade. Trading queens is also fine. The position should be close to equal either way. So black picks up a bishop pair and white sort of ties black down along this diagonal. Everybody's got something. This bishop is so precious, black won't even tuck it on b7. They tuck it all the way on a8. Very strong Golem vibes from Hosta with this move. Doesn't want anybody getting anywhere near that bishop. Or black was just thinking and saw rook c7 coming. Wow, the eviction is not going so easily. If you go queen b8, you're actually blundering this bishop over here, so black has to be careful. So they go queen d8, white goes for this. I think black just has to take it all. And maybe knight e8 to try to simplify. Oh, right, doubling on a file could be good too first. Wait a minute, white refuses to repeat? The two rooks should be a bit better than the queen here, so interesting to see white not going back and forth. Very, very aggressive by Mudit. And Mudit in chat confirms. Ego took over. I thought I was better. Well, good on you, Mudit, for not playing for a draw against a strong player, for having confidence. A lot of people play very, very meagerly against me. I can tell when they're playing like they expect that I'm better than them. So good on you for having confidence in yourself even when your opponent is high rated. Definitely good on you for that. It's fine to have some ego. If you have no ego at all, I mean, if you got no confidence, no belief in your strength, your skills, your positions, then you can't win your games, right? You have to have some belief in yourself. All right. So the queen gets kicked out. Pawn gets grubbed. Here's another pawn. It's looking great for black. Like, they're basically rook c2 away from checkmating white. Let's see how it goes. Oh, wait a minute. This was a tactic. Hang on, David. Ay, ay, ay. Attacking all the pieces. Oh, man, that's why e4 gets played. Okay, of course. So black got too eager here. Yeah, black blundered the tactic. Didn't have a ton of time, but still, that's, at this level, that's a blunder. The game's not that easy, is it? You might not like this suggestion, Mahogi. But I'm looking at this very, very calm move for you. My first thought is, if we can't take this, let's play here, right? Block the pawn, take this anyway, go on the attack. But now I'm thinking queen takes e7, it feels a little murky. Because suddenly she's in the middle of the board, right? And there are a bunch of things that are barely defended. Right? And if I give this kind of move now, it's just too late. If I go about my business taking this pawn, I'm leaving everything kind of disconnected, and I'm not confident that there's not going to be some kind of tactic. Knight f7 with queen e4, or, if we take here on d4, knight h6, and yeah, I guess maybe here because we're threatening queen e5 checkmate. It's a pretty solid threat. So, okay, maybe I should not be so wimpy and I should just calculate queen e7 and not be so worried about it. But right now I'm a little bit wimpy. I'm not in calculating shape because I haven't done any calculation exercises for, 2 weeks or something here. And so I'm offering you a wimpy little move here. I'm offering you a real wimpy move as an idea for consideration. To some extent, if you can keep this queen at bay, if you can actually keep it from getting into the center of the board, that might be really nice for you, right? It might really reduce the value of white's queen. So this might just be wimpy. It might also be accidentally good. Who knows? That's an idea. In any case, we get this blunder, and white picks up an exchange for 2 pawns, which is actually more or less an equal trade, but now it's going to get harder to play with a piece and a rook and pawns against the queen, plus a7 and e7 are hanging. Yeah, so you didn't really get 2 pawns for it. So basically, you blundered an exchange, and now it's complicated and your advantage is probably gone. Brings the knight back into the game. Plays the tactic that I saw before. Wow. Mood it. You've got reason to have some confidence and to go for it. Nice. Nice work. The Avalier is a lost. What does that mean, man with head of dog? Did we rebrand? I am back in the US. I have not played a 960 tournament yet. But I've got the viewer tournaments going again, which is fun. What was going on with this move, by the way? Just a little double attack I got to ask about. That's a question mainly to Mooted and Hosta. Bishop e6, a double defense. I didn't see that. All right. Sounds good. Knight f7. Takes, boom. Verlieren Avalier. You saw bishop e6. Good. Good on you, melt like butter. Oh, man with head of dog's not asking about me rebranding. King Charles rebranding from King Charles Cavalier to King Charles Cav. Ah, no wonder it was such an elusive question to me. All right. The nice thing is now you've got a pure bishop pair. And it's not easy for white to play either here. I think what white needs to do is get this knight near your king's business. Good call. Take! Check. Check. Oh my god, another pawn. No! Moon it! Oh, you had him, Moon it! You had him! Oh. You had 2 minutes against 20 seconds, Moon it. This game was 100% yours at this point. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, you really had it. You really had it. Ay, 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 ay. Okay, Mudit, I'm not telling you that this is what should happen, but if it were me, this game would torment me. Like what you were saying, you're not going to sleep tonight. This game would be haunting me when I try to go to sleep tonight. It would be haunting me tomorrow, right? Okay, so I've got the technique, Mudit, for getting rid of the haunting. Okay, and I'm going to tell it to you since it sounds like this may be relevant for you like for me. You've got to put this kind of a game to rest. You can't just go around the rest of your life like, oh yeah, I was playing against the master. I had a great position. I avoided a repetition. I played with queen against 2 rooks. I found some tactics. I found some more tactics. I was slowly outplaying him. I blundered my queen, lost the game, and who knows if I would have ever won it. Here's what you got to do about this Mudit to put it to rest and to also be able to rest yourself in the future. You have to take this position here and play it against somebody else. Okay? You have to take this position and go replay it as white against somebody. Give yourself 2 minutes on the clock and like a 5-second increment or so and replay it a couple times if you need to until you're very good at winning this endgame. It's not an easy endgame, but if you play really well, I believe you should be able to win this one. And so, that's what I do with these kinds of things. Play them out later on and correct the mistake, win the game, and then you can move on with your life much, much, much better. Something like that, man, with head of dog. Something in that direction, yeah. You should replay the scenario somehow with some improvements. Exactly. Just spar it with somebody. All right. Cool. So that might have been the last round of all these tournaments. Let's see. So Kat Kassen wins the 1700 plus tournament. Congrats to them, and also good job Mudit for putting up such a spirited championship game. The tournament was only 2 rounds for these players, but what an exciting game, right? Doesn't that give folks some envie? What's the word in English? Some desire to participate in these kind of battles yourselves? Oh yeah. Everyone here wants to be on a date with man with head of dog when they tell us, I think of this less as a date and more as sparring. Dojoers are like, you're on. Let's post-mortem. And let's check out who won the other sections. Chess Dojo Club. We're gonna look in here. And where do I find? By the way, for those who need to fight more, these tournaments are still open. Okay, so I just send the link there, and let me find this live. Admin set. I don't want admin settings. I just want to see the games. club events. Past events. All right. The under 1300. The winner was Knut Skogstad. Yes, congratulations, Knut. And congratulations, Sully, for second place and Bojack for third place. Very nice. And then we have a 13 to 1700 section here, right? Where is it? There it is. No, that was last week's. Oh, the 13 to 1700 is still going. Yes. More games. It looks like Kind Pawn has already won the tournament, though, with 3 out of 3. Let's see what's still going. Boondock versus Kieternach. Yeah. 2 rooks and a queen against 2 rooks and a queen. Beautiful position. Beautiful position. When are which tournaments melt like butter? The classical arenas are going right now for another 9-ish hours. So those, you can still play in those, anyone who wants to. And this rapid tournament is once a week. Generally, it's going to be a Saturday morning around 9:30 Pacific, like today. Like when this started an hour and a half ago. But normally, or after a while, we'll have more participants, and then we'll have more rounds, and the tournaments will go a bit longer. All right, so we got this game, and maybe a second game also between Baymon and Eton. Yeah. All right, Baymon eyes 2 weak pawns with 1 queen. Basically, the superpower of queens is eyeing multiple things at once. They got that multi-directional way of playing. Material here looks about equal, but I think white is up a pawn. Maybe white took this pawn on b7 with the queen at some point and came back and came here. Because we see white just a little bit behind in development and black behind a pawn. There you go. That's how you end up with one player having an extra pawn and one player having more development. Black h5, nice idea. You got to get something going because you're down a pawn. Got to use your time to go for something. All right, Kevin James invites anyone who wants to spar an opening or do a game review. Ping the other Kevin James in the general channel of the Dojo Discord. Kevin James is looking to do some sweat work today. Need somebody to sweat with them. Now it's like a big question. Do you keep going with the attack and let white's queen get in your business? Do you try to block her out somehow? Not easy to block her out. If you wanted to block her out, I think knight g4 to defend laterally with the queen could be the move, or less aggressively knight h7 heading to g5. Unfortunately, this move here is unlikely to work, right? I mean, you can only sack so much. I know white's playing without any of this, but the structure is so solid. So a critical question is, what happens here? h3. I guess there's a less critical option for black, which is you just go knight h6 and you're still defending. Because you don't want to let the queen in here. Well, that's fine, King Charles. If you're not a dojo member, you can still spar with Kevin. Anyone can spar. the point of the dojo program is not to be paying the monthly tribute to the senseis, although we're certainly not rolling in it yet. But the point is to learn a way to study and improve, and be able to have good training throughout your life with other people. I was thinking at first that, because you don't want to let the queen in, that you might have to go for the big Sakaruski, right? And then like this. This is nice and controversial because you're pretty close to mating white, and it's the kind of thing you need to do while these pieces are here. Well, that's very kind of you, King Charles. Hopefully you mean it. Hopefully you recommend it, because it seems good. This is really hard to tell if white survives this or not, right? Basically, black's threat is to check you, is to trade on f2, queen takes, check you, king f1, and then go rook f8 defended by the knight on d7 and try and win that queen. And it starts to set up, some real tactical complications. At the moment, I'm not sure if it works or not. Let's play rook b1. White also has the problem that they can't move either of these pieces, and rook takes f8. That traps your own king. That looks like unequivocal death. So let's say rook b1. Let's just see if black has a winning threat. I mean, there's also ways to build black's position, but let's see. Because I know there's going to be this bishop f3 defense, a Chekaruski, a king that's got to go here. This is like the most we can pressure white to try and break their position, you see. Here we recover the piece with 2 extra pawns, completely winning. Queen f1, maybe similar, except king g2. Oh my lord. Can white really be doing this? Yes? That's a shocker. So queen f1. Oh, we have to just keep playing. My instinct is that black's actually winning here, even though this is not yet something you could call conclusive, right? Like white's going to play a move like queen e2, g2, or h1. And black's just going to play g4 because we've trapped our own queen and we're not playing for mate anymore. So it's something like here, 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 here. You just queen the pawn. The end. If the bishop goes here, rook f1 traps it. If the bishop goes here, rook f2 traps it. That's why it's important to have the pawns taking away the bishop squares for a bit here. Very complicated. My guess is that's good for black. Black played knight g4 in the game after 5 minutes of calculation. Just like us. We were thinking about that for about 5 minutes. e4, no h3. Okay. Letting all the pieces out. Not being too... Oh, this is a really good move from Baemon. Oh, viral stigma. What happens if white just ignores it and develops calmly, right? So h3 is the most challenging move. h3 is the, like, you got nothing chump move, right? Back off, or just sack out of desperation and lose. I'll take the pieces and win, right? That's h3. It's the most critical line, and I think it fails completely. Then there's the most basic line, right? Bishop d2 and, just going rook e1 and stuff. How does black attack, right? If it starts looking spicy, just go knight e2 for white. Fair enough. So h4, basically, poking at the structure. That's what black does. And now black's threat is knight h2, king h2, hg. So you can see it got spicy really, really fast there. Yeah, you can try and hold on with knight e2 for sure. My next moves for black are not quite working. I have a general feeling that this is like a little bit passive, and I actually think that what Baemon did, which I wasn't really thinking of, but I think it's an X-clam. I think this choice here to abandon his solid structure and just loose the pieces, I have a very strong instinct now that this was like a double X-clam decision. And Baemon thought for 2 minutes about it, which was really good. They respected knight g4. A lot of times somebody thinks 5 minutes on something like knight g4. At this level, you'll see an opponent just say like, oh yeah, you're an idiot, h3, resign. You gotta respect your opponent. If they think a whole bunch, they were probably thinking about something, you know? You have to respect your opponents at this level here. So Baemon does that, gives a reciprocal big think back at Eton, and comes up with, I think, just a brilliant move, not resting on your laurels. A lot of people who play like a positional opening like this as white, there's like a weakness here. They're up a pawn. They want to slowly get everything. You know what I mean? They want to make no concessions, no weaknesses in the pawn structure. Bishop d2, rook c1, knight a4, pick apart the c pawn. You know, next step, pick apart the d pawn, whatever. And here he just abandons his structure and says, I need to blow open the position to deal with the weakness of my king. The weakness of the king's position looks fine, right? The weakness of the king is these two pieces. So I just need to blow open the game, find room for the knight on the king's side, the bishop, etc. I won't have like a completely winning structure with this c-file thing, but I'm already up a pawn, and black's got some compromised spots in the structure. So let me just open everything up, plus I've got a bishop pair. To me, this is, you know, exclamaviach, as my old buddy used to say when we commented together back in the day, a million years ago now. Yeah, it was very, very impressive move. H4 with some ignoring. Oh, it's getting spicy. Black had knight takes h2 here, right? Which is a hell of a drug, a hell of a hard thing to calculate. Note that if Baemon went for bishop f4, seemingly killing black with the queen and bishop thing, that's part of what e4 releases, Eton can just win the game. Just sack the rook, don't think too much, and white's going to be crushed. Just thrashed here. Cannot cover these dark squares at all, and the h-pawn is going to come to h3 to try and trap the bishop as well. So e5 takes. I have a feeling knight h2 was stronger here, but we're so low on time now that we may not have time to calculate it. Okay, hg, hg. Eton under a minute looking for some kind of blow. You know, knight f2, rook f2, queen g3 should be top of mind here. There's knight f2, rook e1 check as well. Hot. What was black going to do if white had played e5 to try and block the queen out? Probably sack a knight on e5. I agree. That was probably the plan. Hey, Blanquito. Probably like this. Oh, but black's down to 10 seconds. Let's see what they're doing. This is kind of freak out time. 1 minute and 23 seconds spent on this move. So Eton spent 80% of the remaining time. 83%. They had 100 seconds. 83% of their time was spent on this move here. Yeah, classical still going. Here are the links to anybody who wants to play classical. Didn't rook f2 win? I don't know. Maybe. All right, Baemon, 3 minutes 50. Maybe throw in bishop f4 before capturing. You got to think. Sometimes you feel like, oh, well, I got to take anyway, whether it wins or loses. Let me just try it. He's got 17 seconds. Maybe he'll flag. And then you play rook f2, queen g3, and you lose. So it's very good if you've got the 4 minutes to look at what your options are before you just blindly take. It's true, you don't need to find something winning. You might be able to win off your opponent's time pressure if you find something at least okay. But if you just blitz out some moves thinking, well, I just got to do it, then there's a high chance that you find by accident one of the ways you can lose in 2 or 3 moves and allow the opponent to win despite having no time resources. So you got to keep looking for good moves when your opponent's low on time. All right. So Abdul is saying here is the truly losing line, because if you block here, then this is with check, and when you come here, this is with mate. And if you block with the rook, then there's going to be queen takes g3. My first idea had been, you sort of take, check here, and I was like, well, that's not that impressive, right? Because you don't want white's queen coming over there. But queen g3 is the brilliant move. The rook can't take on f8 because it's pinned, and if it takes over here, you just, finish the mate because they're cut off. So rook f2 seems completely losing to rook e1, I think. Therefore, Beimon has been thinking for 2 minutes here, which is admirable. Many people would have just blitzed out like, well, I got to, and then hoped that it worked out. Let's see what Beimon can come up with. Is it going to be tough enough? Will Itan be able to continue creatively attacking with 17 seconds on the clock? The games we're looking at, Blanquito, are from the Saturday Rapid Tournament, right? But the Classical is still open as well for anyone who wants to play a Classical game today. Head into the Classical arenas and find an opponent. So what moves does White have here? It's got to be moves that don't allow queen g3. So knight e4, bishop f4, knight e2. Those are all like the moves you can consider. Queen d3, but there's knight takes queen, but you should be looking for a move. Any move to get over here and defend this. Against knight e4, knight takes e4 is probably not good for White. Let's see what White came up with. Bishop f4. 3 minutes and 22 seconds on that move. A minute left for Beimon, but look at Itan's time. Goes for the rook sack. 12 seconds left. Takes. And now, do you take with queen or save the knight? Not much time left. Queen takes. Now, does White take the knight with one of these pieces or not? You could accidentally trap your king in, potentially, by taking on f2, right? Like, queen f2, queen h2 is mate. Rook f2, you still have the f1 square to maybe escape to. I was thinking that, oddly, just a move like queen g6 might be a big candidate move for White, right? Just, what's Black's threat? Oh, I guess it would be something like this. Ow. Okay. Good thing that Beimon played all the right moves, huh? A risky situation he was in. What should White do now? He's got just gobs of extra material. Definitely using their time is the answer, yeah. You want to trade off 1 or 2 pieces or surround your king even more with pieces. So I would think rook e1. And after half, I approve Beimon spending almost half the time on this move. It's such a good one. I approve. Now Black has bishop g3 to regain a bit of material, but it's fine. It's trading, And then you take on c6. Yeah, win the game with the passed pawn. Check. Can take with queen or with king. I'd probably take with queen, but we'll see. King's reasonable too. Gets checked. Gonna grab this pawn. If we could centralize our queen at some point, we would take away a lot of squares from Black. All right, queen. Black has run out of pieces. Now they're just playing for a perpetual on the dark squares, right? They are, Falk. They are. Chekaruski. 20-some seconds each. White has escaped the checks. And now there's your prize. Collect it. Beautiful. Beautiful by Beimon. Did you notice that Beimon needed basically every single resource of time that they had. Did you see that there's nothing left at the end? Yeah, the next piece is the knight, Hockey Chess Dude. That's absolutely right. That's what white needs to bring into the game, is the knight. It could at least cover some angle to the king if you move it near the king. The only way you can lose this is getting perpetual checked. So if you put this knight on a square, any of these 4 squares, you've won the game. Ooh, trapping the opponent's queen with this and holding this diagonal. That's advanced. That's advanced. I won at Dungeons and Dragons, and it was advanced. Oh man, the knight never came. And white's back to getting checked. Oh mama. This surely is a dream. Oh, and the queen trade finally relieves the tension. I was feeling the pressure there. I don't know if Baymon was, but I was. I was feeling I was feeling that there. That pressure. Whew. That's correct, Hockey Chess Dude. That's the song. Yeah, black should have avoided the queen trade at all costs to keep having chances of the perpetual, because white had not conclusively protected their king. And what a fantastic game by both of those contestants, Baymon and Eton of chess. Fantastic. Fantastic. There's still a game going. The game between Boontak, Striker, and Kieternach. Which is a heavy piece endgame. Holy moly. Both kings are mated. Black's like this. White's like whatever. It's just flying through the middle of the board. Black could check and take the queen at any point, but yeah, they may feel like they're confident delivering a checkmate. Who's that casting devious stares in my direction? That's what this white king is thinking, right? Oh la la. He's getting surrounded. Rook A1 is good. Queen C3 is also good. Very good mating technique, Queen C3. How's Boondock on time? 1.5 minutes to wade through this. I do melt like butter, yeah. Check a Ruski. So now black's got to clean up this pawn. The only hope for white is this pawn coming all the way down. That'll do it. Boondock connects with the right. And yes, Eton, that was a crazy game. You can watch the VOD to see our commentary on it, because we watched a good long stretch of that game. And it was superb. All right, Kind Pawn wins the tournament with 3 out of 3. Unfortunately for us, we didn't get to see any of Kind Pawn's. We didn't happen to see any of Kind Pawn's games, so surely we missed out on some great ones. But congrats to Boondock Striker and Baymon, also on 2nd and 3rd place with 2 out of 3. Lovely work, everybody. Yeah, fun tournament. Fun tournament. Will I review the games now? Do you have a game that you want me to review, Melt Like Butter? I have the time to review 1 or 2 more games if somebody has a question about a game they played. Especially if we've got Kind Pawn in here, the winner of our 13 to 1700 section, and now over 1700. You're welcome, Boondock Striker. Thanks for participating. Spread the word, folks. Spread the word. Let's get some more people in here. These tournaments are obviously more fun when there's more people. I don't want to pressure anybody to join. You know, when there's people in here who just want to sit and watch. Yeah, I don't want to force somebody who's not planning to play. You know, you play your good chess when you're visualizing and planning that you're going to play. You get up in the morning saying, I'm going to be playing this tournament in 2 hours. You eat your breakfast thinking, I'm going to be playing this tournament in a bit. I'm going to be playing my King's Gambit. No, I'm going to be playing my Queen's Gambit and my Slav defense. That's when you play well. So I don't want to pressure anybody, but get the word out that it's going on. And, you know, there will be people who want to play. And more people who want to play, swelling our ranks, will give us more opponents, more games, more variety of ideas and openings and everything. And it gets better and better and better. I watched a segment of it, Kiternach, but not enough. We could look some more at it if you want. I accidentally said that King's Gambit thing, Melt Like Butter. It's like sometimes you can't help yourself, and I'm like, no, I don't want to be a bad influence on the new kids. Eton, you think rook takes f2 instead of knight takes f2 maybe. Interesting. Let's see if I still got that game open here. Baymon versus Eton of chess. Well, Kiternach, you eventually lost the game, so surely you're correct. You must have messed up big time at some point. Yeah, Viral Stigma around here was telling us rook takes f2. I don't know the details of why. Let's see if we can figure it out. Oh, maybe it's just queen g3, the sort of quote-unquote straightforward move. The point is that if the rook ever goes to f1, you can checkmate because the king can't escape. And otherwise, you're going to play rook e1. But why you can play king f1... Then you have knight takes here. And rook f8 winning. Rook e1 first, Viral Stigma. Okay. Rook e1 first. Rook here. 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 Check. Here. Oh, wow. This is a long calculation, Stigma. Does it go like this? Check here. If king here, you've got check, forcing him back into the box. And if king h1, you've got this. Oh, I wasn't expecting bishop h2. So then white's down to queen takes, knight takes, king takes, queen takes. Takes. We're almost winning as black, but... one stupid pawn is threatening to defeat everything. Everything we've built, ruined by one stupid pawn. Check. Wherever the king goes, you've got queen f3. Well, that was a really long one-move calculation. That was like 30 seconds. 30 seconds for me to notice queen f2. Well, I noticed it. 30 seconds for me to calculate the next move. Wow, rook f2. Check. And if the bishop goes... Every now and then, your brain just moves so slowly, it's kind of agonizing to yourself. You know? Do we just have to back up and say this attack is still going to work next move? So here we threaten nothing. I thought I had a threat. I thought or hoped I had a threat. This is not a threat. Disappointed to find that I have no threat. Oh, maybe here. Check. To the miserable king. So king h1. This looks kind of stupid, but it's sufficient. We just cross. Check him to hell. And here rook takes. The key is we can't take with the queen and trade everything. We have to take with the knight. And if queen takes, then we have this winning. So we take with the knight. And now we have to hope that we've got mate if white just waits. Oh yeah, we do. We've got queen g3. Slick. Boom. Okay, so white can't take that. So now they're going to try and move like this. Whoo! Hoo-wah. Still a mess. Still a mess. Check. Here. Ugh, by the skin of our teeth. Awesome, Boondock Striker. Thank you. Go for it. Maybe queen h3 would have been better than queen h4, huh? It also covers different colors of squares, right? We've got a dark squared bishop and then your queen's on the light squares. These variations are incalculable, right, Eton? Like, even in a classical game, they're probably incalculable. And in a rapid game, Falk, we're going to use this time to also do opening sparring, endgame sparring, etc. It's not always going to be a rapid tournament. I can only do one weekend slot. It's a lot for my family. So we're going to use one weekend slot and rotate different activities through it. But we're going to do some big sparrings, and we're going to use them to calculate, to assign people dojo ratings for endgames and openings and stuff like that eventually. Working through this time slot. So let anybody / everybody that you know in the dojo community and discords and stuff, let them know that this is going to be an important time slot. That we're going to do a lot of stuff in here. Holy moly, Eton. It was an insane game. We don't know for sure if rook f2 was the right move. It's pretty interesting. It's looking promising, but it's hard to be certain. Hard to be certain. But it's good to get it. It's good to get a taste of the variations, even if we can't calculate all of them, right, Etan? I mean, you guys made the game great because you played a lot of important and critical moves. This was really important. I think it was the right move. E4, I think, was just brilliant from Baemon. We haven't refuted Bishop D2. We looked at it a bit during the game. We didn't refute it, but I strongly believe that this was like his only way to get into the game. And H4. Continuing the attack. All this was correct, you know. E5 would have been interesting here as well. That we're not sure. Folks in chat were wondering, Etan, had you planned to sack one of the knights if white tried to block your pieces out with E5? Or were you going to cross the bridge when you got to it? I kind of suspected this knight was just going to go. That was sort of my feeling. I didn't know for sure like what's the right move or anything. That was my feeling, was that you were going to just give that knight so that all the others could play. Okay, yeah, perfect. The plan was knight e5, but you weren't sure. Just like me. Okay, and so ED5 came and you traded. And yeah, here also, Etan, this move here is an important move to consider. I don't know if it was better or worse than what you did, but if you didn't consider the move, you should have considered it. And if you did consider it, then fine. You know, you had to choose between knight f2 or hg or knight h2 or whatever. And yeah. Boondog Striker says, how long has chess.com had ads? Because I couldn't even say GG to my opponent. It went straight to a car commercial. Chess.com has always had ads for free tier accounts since late 2011. I think. Or was it late 2012? No, late 2012. Late 2012 is when that was added. And it was business-wise dramatically important for the company. It was like, yeah, decisively important business-wise. But if you've got a paying account, you should not have ads. As far as I know, they've never had ads on paying accounts. Okay, you didn't see knight h2, yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you've got 2 minutes. There's only so many things you can look at in the game. Super complicated. But just so you know, when trying to break down the g3 square, h5, h4 is a key component to increase the pressure. But even then, it often requires a piece sack, right? But this is the precondition for the piece sack. You can't just, in a position like this one, you can't just throw knight h2 before the pressure is maxed out, right? So h4 correct here, but once you've got the h-pawn in position, this is an important move to consider. It won't always work, but if you were in a classical game, you should always consider it. And if you're in a rapid or blitz game, you know, depends on the time situation and your instinct, but it should be a pattern in your arsenal, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah, I got a message that ICC is relaunching with a new something or other. No idea what to expect of it, so maybe we'll see or hear about it in the near future. Hey, Kraai. Yeah, that's the news. Tomorrow. I'm not like trying to spread the buzz about it or anything like that. Somebody just mentioned it, and I also heard it. And that's all I know. And money tournaments for all chess.com banned players. That would be some Wild West event. ICC is like Yahoo Chess. Yeah, who knows? I will say, I'll just make one little business comment on it, even though I'm not, a huge business person. But I would say that for ICC, or any other site, to make a dent in the chess market, they would have to have some kind of a value proposition or product that you don't have on Lichess or chess.com, right? They would have to offer something that one of the two big sites doesn't have. If they just try to say like, oh, we are another chess.com, that's not going to be enough to move people, right? When we successfully moved everyone from ICC to chess.com, it was because we were offering things that ICC wasn't. All right. So I think that's it for our tournament today. Thanks, everybody, for the wonderful session together.